The activity I created is how can we navigate on Mars. So this activity is where students will do research and create a rover in order to navigate Mars and meet the needs for the long-term goals for the Mars exploration program that NASA has. So the lesson information, the part 1 is Curiosity 7 Minutes of Terror, which is a video I'll discuss a little later. Part 2 is discussing the questions and ideas the students have about the video. Part 3 is exploration into those ideas. Part 4 is planning, Part 5 is construction, and Part 6 is the explanation. How does this activity align with the STEM practices? It is exploratory, hands-on, student-driven, and research-driven. So it is all about NASA's idea that they need to find a vehicle that is able to go along Mars in order to meet their 4 specific goals that they're looking to meet on Mars, which I will discuss a little bit later. So the students is necessary to take the research on the Earth's atmosphere, understanding what specific things that the scientists have to consider in order to create the rover, in order to create their own model of the rover. How does this activity adhere to the tenets of inquiry? The inquiry continuum level 2 by Fay and Betts is where I feel like this activity falls, because the problem is provided to the student, but the student develops their own procedure for investigating the problem and decides what data to gather and interprets the data in order to create their rover. It's identifying a problem that scientists are really facing today. There are multiple components to consider and more than one solution. Part 1 is the video that I was talking about, and it's all about the 7 minutes that it takes for the spacecraft to get into the Mars atmosphere and then to actually land on Mars. It's a really interesting and thought-provoking video that the students are able to watch and see the problems that scientists really face, and that is what's going to help them start their research towards creating their rover. So these are just some of the questions. I'm just going to read a few that the students had after the video was over. How do they measure the velocity of a different atmosphere? How do the four-wheelers work on Mars? Why do scientists want to get on Mars? How many failed attempts have there been? This is the exploration into the ideas and questions. So the students, I gave the students the handout. They did the research for this, so they got to see actually which crafts landed on Mars and were successful, and what the 4 goals are. So the 4 goals are determine whether life ever existed on Mars, characterize the climate of Mars, characterize the geology, and prepare for human exploration of Mars. So the first Part 4 is planning. So they made lists of all their materials, what they thought they could use to create the rover. They created a drawing example, a sketch, and they got the materials listed and then started their construction process. Here are just some pictures from the construction. Unfortunately, none of my students can be videoed or recorded, so I just took pictures of them without their faces in order to have an idea of what this looked like in the classroom. And then at the end we had them do a gallery walk where they walked around and they actually had to explain why they made their craft that way, what material they would actually use if they were doing it for the real planet Mars, and the research behind all of their ideas.